Good morning. Happy Christmas Eve. Welcome everybody today, Thursday morning. Mike and Joe, good to see you. There's Janisa. Welcome this morning. Jan Akins, good morning. Wendy and Jeremy, welcome to you all. So just as a reminder, tonight at 7 we're doing our bonfire out here, and we will be live streaming it on Facebook, not on YouTube, but on Facebook. Just like we do our morning devotions, it's going to come through on, actually literally on my phone, just like we do these morning times. So 7 o'clock tonight, we're going to have a bonfire, and it will be live streamed. So if you can't make it, you can always watch it online. Mike and Kim Johnson, good morning. Oh yeah, thank you. Reminded me, I never plugged my mic in until after I begin because it wasn't working before, unless I do that. I don't know why. But so just in case you didn't hear that, our bonfire is tonight at 7 o'clock, and we are going to be live streaming it on Facebook, just like you're seeing me this morning. There's Deanne Fine, good morning. Karen Lowe, morning everybody. Lori Agassi, good morning. So today we're going to wrap up this little mini-series we've done on emotional health, specifically unhealthy approval seeking. And we'll get back into more of a scripture-directed devotional time next week. This has just been a nice diversion, and I think it's an important one. Let me just give that little plug for the importance of developing our emotional health as it relates to us as believers. I really think that, and I've said this before, this is an important part of Christian discipleship. It ought to be, and is generally very underdeveloped in churches, and certainly in my church experience. It has been, and this is something that's pretty new to me with regard to focusing on it. I mean, I've been aware of it most of my adult life, but in the last couple of years, really focusing on some key areas that are just really hanging me up from being the person I think God would call me to be, and how I love people. And that's really the root of why we want to be emotionally healthy. To achieve emotional maturity is to follow God's command to love one another as God has loved us. And God is obviously emotionally healthy, but we are pretty fractured by sin and our life experiences that have negatively affected us. You think about brokenness in the church, broken relationships, fractures in teams that are trying to work together, fractures in leadership, church splits. How many of them can be tracked back, not just to sin in general, but specifically emotionally unhealthy behavior? And I just think that's why if we are developing our emotional maturity, we'll be able to love one another freely and deeply because we're not doing it out of fear. We're not trying to hide some part of ourselves. And we started out this week talking about specifically approval, seeking other people's approval, seeking another subset of that is seeking validation from people. And the root of that is because we aren't anchored in our own identity. We're not anchored in our own value, our own sense of self. And a part of placing our faith in Jesus Christ and having our souls and our mind and our spirit just regenerated by God is that we take on this new sense of our identity. This is why we started this in this area. So approval getting, we're trying to seek that value from some other place. It's because we've been dislodged or set adrift, maybe another way of looking at it, from our sense of true worth and value and self, which God assigns to us. And we're trying to look for that anchor, that validation, that approval in some other source, from another skewed source, many times. rather than God, and He's created us, so we focus on that. So this morning I want to just wrap things up by what is, to me, anchor points for emotional health. They include my desire an unhealthy desire to seek approval in others. Any action like that which dislodges me or sets me adrift from my true understanding of myself and my identity in Christ. It helps me. It creates unhealthy behaviors in me. So, how do I re-anchor myself? Number one, we've already talked about this. We reaffirm our identity in Christ, our value as assigned to us by God. We reaffirm that. This is why we were here this entire week. It's because I had a recent experience where I was emotionally dislodged because of approval seeking from my true sense of value in Christ. And so I returned to it in my devotional time to reassess and reestablish, re-anchor myself in my value in Christ and redefine that, re-clarify that, so that I can get back on track. I can love other people more freely. My love isn't dependent upon someone else's approval. So with that kind of concept in mind this morning, I just thought I would identify other anchor points that have been helpful to me. I'm just talking about me specifically, but I think they're universal in application, so these might be helpful to you as well. When my emotions, this is just a general statement, when my emotions set me adrift from my anchor points, this is how I re-establish my sense of emotional health. I speak truth to myself by reminding myself of my core values and beliefs, things I just know to be true about healthy emotions, healthy relationships. And so like for instance, if a relationship is kind of gone awry, there's been a little bit of a fracture in a relationship, and my first thought in my emotions is, I did something wrong, I need to change, they just don't like me, they're disappointed in me, and therefore I need to change who I am to meet their expectation or meet their approval. That's kind of an unhealthy, my emotions are seeking to unseat me from healthy behavior, healthy relationships. So when that happens, I send down my anchors. I go back to my values, my core beliefs about what is healthy. And I remind myself of those things, and then I evaluate my emotions accordingly. So I just jotted down a bunch in my journal, and I'm just going to read a couple of them for the sake of time, just to give you practical examples of what I mean by this. And I'm hoping this is helpful to us as well. And if you've heard me teach for any length of time, you have heard me say a number of these things. So I'm just going to, as part of a review this week, what we've talked about is anchor number one. My identity and worth are assigned by God. I am His beloved. I send down these anchors. Anytime my emotions begin to unseat me, set me adrift from reality, truth, healthy behavior, healthy emotions, I send down these anchors. Number one, my identity and worth are assigned to me by God. I am His beloved. Number two, my viewpoint or my opinion is separate from my identity. So if someone has a different opinion than me, that's okay. We talked about this yesterday, because that's not a part of, it's my belief, which is subject to interpretation. It's subject to my experience, my knowledge. So someone else has a different opinion. It introduces new information. I evaluate that. It doesn't threaten my identity, because that's separate. That's called differentiation. Let me read a few more. You've heard me say this. My performance is a measure of value, but it is not the only or best measure. So when my performance is not up to the level that I would prefer, it's okay. That doesn't mean, it doesn't strike at the core of who I am. It just means that, oh, I need to work on that. I need to get better at that. Doesn't that sound freeing? Versus if I performed poorly, that's going to result in other people thinking I'm a failure. I am a failure. Remember, failing doesn't mean you're a failure. Failing just means that there's some work to do. And so we get back up, and it's such an important tool that we all must learn is failure. To get knocked down, to get back up. What do I need to learn? How do I need to grow? What skills do I need to develop and move forward? We don't just give up and throw up our hands and say, I am a failure. Then we will be a failure if that's what we think. So we got to think, again, that's separate from my performance is a measure of value, not the only nor the best measure of value. Here's another one. I have a long list. I'm just reading a couple of them. The importance of detachment. Detachment is the idea. We talked about differentiation earlier this week. This is another D. It's a detachment. Detachment simply means that I am not responsible for another person's happiness, their emotions, their life experience, their choices. I'm not responsible for them. I am, however, responsible to them. And when those lines are blurred, we have trouble detaching, and we get overly enmeshed in their emotions, in their life, and all of a sudden we drift, are set adrift from our true self. We become a false self, where we start doing and experiencing emotions on someone else's behalf, or experiencing the consequences of somebody else's choices. In other words, like somebody's made some poor choices financially, which put them in a rough spot. They're experiencing that pain. If I'm responsible to them, I say, wow, what can I do to just walk alongside you during this painful time? Yes, I validate you are experiencing a painful thing. That's being responsible to them. I'm here to pray for you. I offer words of encouragement, walk with you through this journey of difficulty. Being responsible for them means, oh yeah, you made these decisions resulting in this bad situation. Let me just fix the situation for you. Yeah, you don't have any money, and so you can't pay this bill. Let me just pay the bill for you. And not to say doing that on occasion isn't bad, but if someone has a history of behavior that's constantly putting them in these bad spots, and we keep rescuing them out of those behaviors, we're not doing them any good. We're taking responsibility for their choices. So detachment means I'm responsible to you. I'm not responsible for you. I'm there for you. I'm going to pray with you. I'm going to offer words of encouragement. I'm going to listen. I'm going to validate that this is a really hard time, but I'm not going to take the consequences for your actions. I'm not going to take responsibility for how bad you're feeling. And that's called detachment. It's so important. It's so freeing to love people in healthy ways when we can make this differentiation. We can detach in this healthy way. And just a quick aside, this is such an important key for anybody in caregiving relationships, or like in ministry, or people who are naturally wired to be caregivers. If you are familiar with the Enneagram, Enneagram 2s are very caregiving personalities. Enneagram 9s are very empathic to what other people are feeling. Those are two examples, so that this idea of detachment is super important for emotional health. And a great book to read, and I've said this before, this sounds odd, but it's not a Christian book, but it's a book called Codependent No More by Melody Beattie. It's written in layman's terms. You don't have to be a doctor to read it. And it really identifies unhealthy behaviors for people who would want to be responsible for people because they just have a heart to caregive for people or emotionally attach to people. And it's a great book. Anyway, detachment. Here's another one I've said often. Negative emotions aren't bad. They just feel bad. I come from a long history in my own personal life of suppressing negative emotions. I just felt negative emotions, sadness, disappointment, resentment, anger, those are all examples of negative emotions, are intrinsically bad. In other words, I shouldn't feel them. And so when I do feel them, because I shouldn't feel them, I suppress them. Like, no, I don't want to feel this way. I only want to feel happy, content, satisfied, all the positive emotions, joyful. I only want those. I don't want any negative emotions because those are intrinsically bad. That is false. I'm just saying that is false. Negative emotions aren't bad. They just feel bad. And I am learning in my life to hold on to negative emotions and feel them, because oftentimes negative emotions are very, very helpful. Oftentimes they are exactly the most appropriate emotion to have in your life circumstance, and we must move into them and feel them. And so many times they are very helpful to us. Like anger and resentment are so helpful to us because they are secondary emotions. Anger is a secondary emotion, specifically. It's never a primary emotion. In other words, anger is simply a red flag or a trigger to something that's deeper, that's gone wrong. So somebody says something to you that's triggered anger in you. And some people, if you're uncomfortable with the word anger, an easier word to admit is upset. Somebody has said something to you and that it has upset you. Nobody likes to feel upset, right? But it's an important red flag to say, okay, why did that upset me so much? Why can I not stop thinking about that? That's a very important question to ask, because there's an underlying emotional feeling that's happened. There's something that's transpired in your soul that you need to address, and it's very helpful. And so resentment is like a subset of anger. So maybe I'm giving something to someone, I'm giving sacrificially, and I'm helping. These are all good, positive things, right? But all of a sudden, they're not as grateful as you think they ought to be, and you start to feel this little tinge of resentment for, hey, just say thank you. I'm doing all this stuff for you, and you start to feel that resentment building up. Resentment is such a helpful emotion because it kind of reveals to you, is like, well, was I doing this in an unhealthy way? Was I helping them in exchange for their approval? Was I helping them in exchange for validation of my own worth? And when they didn't reciprocate with that validation, resentment starts to build up. See how these negative emotions are very helpful to us to understand our own emotional health and re-anchor ourselves in our validation coming from God. Primarily, yes, it is healthy to have validation from other people and to have approval and affirmation from other people. I'm not saying that that's not healthy at all. I'm just saying it has to be secondary. It has to be secondary. We have to feel our primary validation and approval coming from our anchored worth in our identity in Jesus. Let me read, I think I have one more here. Yeah, okay, so let me just comment. I don't think I'm going to read any more of these. The emotion of, I'll conclude with like sadness, for instance. Sadness being an appropriate emotion, where we have to self-validate and say, yeah, it's okay to feel sad. With regard to how somebody else is experiencing, so what's triggering to me is when somebody else is experiencing a very strong emotion, a negative emotion, specifically anger, resentment, disappointment, and it's related somehow to me. I get really, that is something that really is commonly dislodging for me, and I want to just portray my false self, just capitulate, just go to go along with whatever they want, to get along, to remove the conflict, to whatever. But if I stay true to myself, I can say, no, I really do want to do this other thing. I know you want to do something different. I know that you preferred something different. You preferred me to be at your function, whatever it is. and you're expressing disappointment to me, and I'm not going to take responsibility for your emotion, but I am responsible to you. I'm going to say, you know what? Yeah, I can see that you're disappointed, but I'm going to stay true to my true self. I'm not being selfish. I'm just being true that I would prefer to do this, or in other words, it's okay to say no. Can I say that? I want to validate you in saying no. You know that I see that that's what you'd prefer me to do, but look at my schedule this week. I'm looking at what I really wanted to accomplish. I don't want to give that up, so I'm going to say no. And we read that person's face, and maybe they're verbalizing disappointment. We have to say, yeah, I'll give you your emotions. I mean, yeah, you're disappointed. I'm sad that, and I had a relationship recently that I disappointed somebody because I was being true to myself, and they put a pause on our friendship. Our friendship is currently paused, and that really made me sad. I was really sad that that was their response to my being true to myself and this core belief, and this is the direction I need to go here. And they expressed disappointment, and they ghosted me. They're just gone. They're off the radar. They just said, I don't approve, and I'm not going to be your friend for a little while. And so that was dislodging for me. I really wanted to capitulate and say, I don't mean it. I don't mean it. Come back to me, friend. But I said, no, I'm going to be true to myself, and I'm going to feel the very appropriate emotion of sadness. I'm just going to be sad that this person chose to distance themselves from me, and which I believe was not a good, healthy choice, but that's their choice. And I can't do anything about that. So I'm going to allow them to have their emotions. I'm going to allow them to make their choices, and I'm not feel responsible for that, but I am responsible to them. And so when they come around, or if they have to be, need my help in some way, I'd help them out. I still love them. I still committed to them as a friend, even though they've kind of ghosted me for a time. So this is what I mean by negative emotions aren't bad. They just feel bad. So it is appropriate for me to feel sad, and I'm not going to take responsibility for this person's unhealthy choice to just stonewall me for me being true to myself. So that'd just be kind of a specific example. So you see how if we are living out of our true self and living in these healthy emotions, sending down these anchors every time our emotions kind of seek to dislodge us, how freeing it can be to then love someone more fully, to give ourselves more vulnerably, to love without fear, because perfect love casts out all fear, right? So I can freely love you because I'm not attached to what you think of me. I'm not attached to you reciprocating or validating me. I'm not attached to your personal happiness and fulfillment and so on. Therefore, I can just love you with the love that God freely gives me. I can pass right along to you, and it's so freeing. I love it, but I have to practice it all the time, honestly. My emotions seek to dislodge me from my true self all the time, and I have to send down these anchors of truth to reestablish my ability to love people more deeply. And it'll be something I work on in my entire life, I'm sure. Anyway, hope that's been helpful. Have a Merry Christmas. We'll hopefully see you at the bonfire. If not, online, we'll see you. And have a Merry Christmas tomorrow morning. God bless. We'll see you next week.